Today I wanted to talk about how to do a deeper dive into allergies. And by allergies, I mean seasonal allergies. It could be ongoing all year. That's very common too. There could be a distinct season to it. So seasonal allergies could be a distinct season. It could be from which typical when pollen is high from like February on till like May or June. It can be throughout the whole summer when it's hot. I know in Toronto they have ragweed here. There, I don't think we have ragweed here, but they have ragweed. So I had a really good friend and colleague. She would just be destroyed in Toronto in the summertime, starting August, September from the ragweed, and that was her allergic reactions. But I have seen allergic reactions happen all year round, and even in the winter when nothing's kind of blooming. And so typically we think of it as pollen season. So it starts in February when winter's starting to ease a little bit and we're starting to get into the flowers blooming and things like that. I know it seems to be, most of us have been mainly inside, but it seems to be quite a strong pollen season this year, and allergies seem to be quite heightened, which can be problematic because as we're walking around doing our essential duties like groceries or what have you, or having to go to work if you're an essential service, and you're sniffing and coughing as an allergy symptom or watery eyes, it's not really being looked upon so favorably right now. So it's scary for people to, or runny nose, people might think that you have a virus or are sick, and I think that's alarming to people. And allergies, there could be similar symptoms to cold flu. It could be sneezing, it could be runny nose, it could be watery eyes, it could be extreme fatigue, it could just be like total stuffiness, but it's not contagious. There's no viral component to it. Ava has really bad allergies right now. Yeah, so many people have such bad allergies right now. There's no viral component to it. There's no bacterial component to it. What it is a histamine reaction in the body. So there's high levels of histamine being produced generally, which is why many of you would be familiar with the medical antidote to it, or if you've watched any of my philosophy videos, the magic bullet cure would be the antihistamine. So the antihistamine is usually prescribed, and I'll go into the natural version of it too, which often will just mask symptoms too. But when the histamine is being released, it's like a vasodilator. We can get inflammation, we get watery eyes, the runny nose, the heavy mucus production, sneezing, all of that is from the heavy histamine release. And that's from various cells in our body, the mast cells in our body, and that could be from the gut tissue, it could be from the lung tissue. Many cells release the histamine. So an antihistamine, common ones would be Benadryl, Reactin, Quercetin, all those. So what happens is it doesn't stop the histamine from being released, but it just stops it's like the histamine, if you can think of it as like this spray being released, but it stops the outer cellular, not cellular, but the outer expression of the effects of the histamine. So it's still being released in the body, but now it's not affecting your eyes, it's not affecting your nose, it's not affecting like the vasodilation for all the watery mucus, but the histamine is still being released. So that is a pure example of magic bullet. You're not treating the root cause of it, but you're treating what outwardly can be seen as an expression of histamine. Excess histamine release is stopped by the antihistamine, but it's in no way, shape, or form stopping the histamine release. Does that make sense? Throw up a heart if that makes sense. So you're still getting lots of histamine release, but the medication is stopping the outward presentation of it. And the supplement equivalent could be, so Donna's giving some thumbs up, so the outward, or the supplement equivalent of it could be quercetin. So quercetin is known to be a natural antihistamine. And again, you're not looking at the root of where the histamine comes from. You're just trying to take a natural supplement so you don't get drowsy or the side effects from an antihistamine, and thinking that the natural is better. It may work better. Is it healthier? I'm not sure, but it's still touted as a magic bullet, like one-stop shop pill, which we do need when the symptoms are bad. It's not about me diving into a 4-year process and a person can't stop sneezing. Of course we have to treat the symptoms. I have no issues with taking an antihistamine when needed or quercetin when needed, but as long as the person is also doing the deeper dive work, and I'll go into a few points of what the deeper dive points could be. But quercetin, which is supposed to be like found in like the garlic family, the onion family, it's a natural derivative of that. That's a extracted supplement to decrease the amount of histamine in the person's body. There are, I think, many like allergy compounds that you can buy, like a variety of different allergy supplements, like a mixture of a few different supplements mixed together that's supposed to help with allergies. But again, that's like it's like sleep. It's like you don't know what the root cause of the allergies are, and so you're kind of like just grasping at straws. You don't really know what you're fixing, and they're just telling you it's an allergy medication or a supplement, but you don't know what the root of it is. So there's going to be no lock and key effect because there's so many different various reasons for a person to express with allergies. Now, when I started treating, I thought allergies was easy. When I was like, oh, a person has allergies, I'll just do a little bit of liver stuff, which is one of the points. You can do that, but it's so much deeper. So when you think about it, an allergy, like flowers are blooming, you're allergic to dust in your home when you're trying to move or pack or, spring clean, whatever it is. Seasons are changing and you have allergies, and so that is essentially, or cut grass, that is essentially like you're allergic to the earth. So to me, I used to think allergies were super simple, but it's a deep cellular imbalance because you're actually having a reaction to the earth. So there's something going on that's far deeper than what meets the eye. And so that is really, really worthy of being explored because it's showing that your body is in a state of distress, inflammation and distress. And so when there's so much stress, distress, inflammation, it's going to manifest a certain way. And in this way, your body is manifesting as being allergic to the earth, which is not good. We should not be allergic to the earth. So there should be enough balance that you could heal the allergies enough that you could move, clean up a room. There's a bunch of dusty boxes and you don't get your histamine response. For me, a histamine response would be asthma. For sure, the dust could trigger asthma. And I think maybe I thought allergies was easy because of all the health stuff I went through. When I had terrible acne, I was like, oh, that's like the least of my worries. And then I also had extremely bad seasonal hay fever, and that was like the least of my worries. It was really bad. Like I would have to leave school. It felt like the equivalent of maybe like a migraine in my nose from histamine. Some nights I would sneeze all night to the point where I couldn't like even catch a breath from the sneezing. It was really terrible, but the allergies, as bad as they were like nothing compared to my food allergies or my food anaphylaxis and my asthma. So I thought it was like kind of an easy thing to treat, but it's not. It is like when we really, really boil it down, it's like being allergic to the earth. So there's a deep cellular imbalance that we have to kind of get to the root of, and as we get to that root, the body doesn't have to respond with all this histamine. And it doesn't have to respond by showing you that it's stressed and inflamed and reacting to these particles in the air because of its stress. So we heal at that deep cellular level, and the histamine will naturally not be a reaction. Even though the seasons are going to change, you might still move, there might still be dust in your house, you may not be on top of it as you clean out a certain room. It's all still going to be the same earth. So my friend Pulveer just logged on. Hi Pulveer, welcome. So does that make sense, that it is like a deeper issue than just something you can grab from a store and heal? So when I treat a person, like say they came in for another reason, like hormones, so I'm getting some thumbs up. Okay, so that's good. Say they come in for hormones, or they come in for sleep issues, some anxiety issue, whatever the symptom is, you name it, autoimmune conditions, gut issues. And then if I don't even address the allergies when that season comes around, they're like, oh, you know, this year my allergies were really, really dampened. I didn't really need any antihistamines or whatever it was. That's because the whole body as a whole is being less stressed and less inflamed. So without even me having to specifically compartmentalize and say, okay, now we're going to treat your allergies. Allergies is a byproduct of the whole overall organism being out of balance. So as we started to balance with the root reason that they came in, when that season came around, they weren't as cellularly stressed, and there wasn't allergies, even though I didn't specifically treat allergies. I treated the whole body. So that's part of it. And that brings me to my first point. I want to just quickly touch on what 4 points could be linked to seasonal allergies. Number one for me, always is the adrenals, and you'll notice me talk about that a lot. And the adrenals are linked to they're, you know, like almost I always say, sometimes the more complicated the case, as you write it out or what a person's telling you, sometimes the easier it is. Jatinder just logged on. Hi Jatinder, welcome. Sometimes the more complicated the case, it almost is easier to discern what the issue is, because it's always going to be linked to the adrenals. And so when a person knows how to treat the adrenals, knows the time it takes, you can help guide a person through it a little easier, because there's so many offshoots. Oh, Jeanette just popped on too. Hi Jeanette, welcome. There's so many offshoots of the adrenals being off that when the more complicated the case, you know it's probably not the only thing, but one of the main things is the adrenals. So for certain, in allergies, the adrenals are off for sure. So if anyone hasn't heard me speak, the adrenals are the little glands. They're tiny glands sitting on top of the kidneys. The kidneys are right where the rib cage kind of meets the spine. So you have the rib cage and the spine, and just like at that little corner of your lower back, on either side of the spine is the kidneys, and on top is the adrenals. And when they are responsible for almost our fight or flight, our adrenaline, balancing our blood sugar, balancing our hormones, balancing our blood pressure, our stress reactions. And when the adrenals have been very taxed, so a person like me, like anyone else who has chronic other issues, the body's in chronic stress state, chronically depleted with asthma, eczema, or whatever, and then there are allergies as a result of the adrenals being totally depleted. So when the cortisol levels, which is what the adrenals release to help stabilize all those things I just mentioned, listed off, when the adrenals are depleted and the cortisol is depleted, it is easier for the histamine to kind of take over and infiltrate the tissues. So there's going to be higher levels of histamine as the adrenals are taxed. So to me, obviously there's cases where that's not the case, but the most often when a person comes in with allergies, we have to treat their adrenals. Their adrenals are taxed, they're stressed, and still we have to find out why their adrenals are taxed and stressed. So you can't also just magic bullet the adrenal supplement and plug that in. You have to find out where the leak is, like why are the adrenals taxed or stressed. So oftentimes it's another inflammatory condition that they have. Perhaps it's, you know, high levels of stress throughout childhood, throughout adulthood. Their nervous system is programmed for trauma, stress, whatever it is. Perhaps they just have a lot of pressure in their life. And when I'm talking about stress, a person can be totally calm. They can be on vacation totally calm, but this is the cellular programming is stress. And so when there's cellular programming of stress, you could be chilled out on the weekend, whatever it is, but the cellular programming of stress is taxing the body, and the adrenals being number one. So whenever a person comes in, I always treat the adrenals. Often there's like a hyperactive immune system. So a high histamine response is a hyperactive immune system. It's overly reactive. It's like overly reacting to everything. It's overly reacting and allergic to the earth. Unconsciously stressed. So you could be relaxed on the weekend, but the programming underneath, like your nervous system, in your as antennae, how we walk around on the world, is programmed for stress. Programmed for, it could be a chilled out day, but you're like, I gotta make dinner, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and it's like there's nothing really to do, but the nervous system is always programmed to make it seem like there's a stressy situation, or the adrenals are always in a stressed situation because of something going on in the body. So many people come in and stress is like a buzzword, and they'll say, I'm not stressed. And I was like, sure, you're not stressed, but your body is presenting with cellular stress. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. So adrenals is number one. For allergies, always. And if you look at even a little bit more esoteric, the adrenals are at the level of the root chakra, and the root is like being grounded to the earth. Sometimes a person with allergies is like stuck in their head. They're more flighty. They're always think. They're always worry, thinking about the next thing. One of my cousins, she's an amazing entrepreneur, has probably 4 businesses under her belt right now. And we'll plan a vacation. We'll get to the vacation, maybe an Airbnb, whatever it is. We'll sit down. She's like, where do you want to go on our next vacation? It's like, we just got here. You haven't even sat and enjoyed it, and she's on to the next vacation. So she's always, thinking of the next. That could be a symbol of the root chakra being kind of off balance, and the adrenals. So sometimes when there's a fight or flight, there's an underlying lack of security or safety or routine or home or feeling grounded. All those could be present in a person who has stressed adrenals. So does that make sense? That's kind of like an esoteric point of view too. They're just always in their head, and they need a lot more grounding. Be in the body, feel the moment, be present in the moment. For me, when I was growing up, that was absolutely the case up until even recently. I don't even remember living here now. It was all here, just totally all here. So there was no root. Yeah, so Donna resonates with that. That's key for the adrenals. So when you're treating the adrenals, you're also trying to pull the person into their body, into living in their body. And Donna's putting her hand up. Yeah, me too. I could be poster child for living here up and not feeling. If any of you haven't experienced this, you won't really get it, but when you have adrenal issues, it's like living from here up is everything. Everything's great because you only live here, and you don't feel emotions in your body, you don't feel things. It's just everything is processed somewhere else, most likely here, and stuff builds up, and then eventually your body's like, I have tons of symptoms because you didn't process anything in your life emotionally. So we want to get you in the body to feel that you are stressed, feel when you have boundaries, feel when you need to say no, feel when you can't overgive, feel when you're people pleasing. And when you feel more of those things and you have your boundaries and you can say no, you won't be as likely to have symptoms. So when you can't process any of these things, you'll have more symptoms. Does that make sense? So that's the adrenals. That's a quick little synopsis. But at the root of all pollen reactions, histamine reactions, is an adrenal imbalance for sure 100% of the time that I've seen. Of course, there's exceptions. I know we're not talking about allergies, but hives is the same. So every time I see a person with hives, it's like the same thing. I know their adrenals are totally off. So we got to treat the adrenals. And you can get like a pharmaceutical, Simran, oh, she's listening to the allergies. So that's a good case. I won't talk about it because of confidentiality, but that's a good case. So yes, we were talking about allergies, and that's a perfect case to pop in for. When a person has allergies, you can't go outside, you know, like it really, really hinders your life, and it occupies a lot of your day. And when all that's cleared up, who are you? Who are you going to be? So what is your passion in life? That's really, that can emerge too. So that I've seen with patients, which is the most gratifying. So maybe their allergies got them in the door, but the real reason that they came in was to find their passion, and through clearing the allergies, they had space to find their passion, which is to me like the best thing in ever. That makes it all worth it. That's everything. Yeah, okay, so number one is the adrenals. Number two, I would look at maybe food sensitivity, because there's a heightened inflammation when there is a high histamine response. So as the body's inflamed, it doesn't have to be joints, it doesn't have to be face, it's a low grade, possibly hidden inflammation, and it's coming out as a excess histamine response. So the epitome of magic bullet is you're covering up the symptoms. So the histamine is being released. You're taking an antihistamine, covering up the outward presentation, but basically the body is totally inflamed somewhere. Something in the, let's talk about the gut. So likely the gut is totally reacting to some foods, and there's some inflammation, and we are just magic bullet covering it up. And so now you don't see the outward presentation, but the body is still inside totally being inflamed. And oftentimes it's an inflammatory food, and I'll just say like the top four is gluten, dairy, corn and soy, let's say. Those would be probably the top four. But more specifically, if we want to talk about pollen reactions, I think dairy is what I've seen the most, and there could be a dairy sensitivity for the person. It's also, dairy is higher in a histamine food, so we can have foods that have higher histamine levels, like chocolate, cured meats, tomatoes have higher histamine, but dairy and fermented foods have higher histamine, but dairy has higher histamine overall. So, you know, that person probably has a low grade sensitivity to dairy like their entire life. Didn't realize it because it's not really showing up, but once a season starts, like February to May is when they're like really feeling the symptoms, and it's quite debilitating. That is when maybe the dairy is more prominent of an issue. Like, it's always an issue, but it's really, really showing itself those months. So if you don't want to remove dairy altogether, I would suggest maybe even just taking it out during the high pollen season, or whatever your inflammatory food is. Maybe it's gluten for you and you have to be more careful of the gluten. Maybe it's just dairy alone, but I've had a lot of success with, even during high pollen season, cutting out dairy or severely reducing it, because when the gut is inflamed and it's not able to break down certain foods, there's inflammation, and then therefore higher histamine releases. So that is a big one. And so taking out dairy, I'm not a huge fan of digestive enzymes. If a person is overriding taking out a food sensitivity and just taking a digestive enzyme, I'm not a huge fan of that. However, during this time, if you take out the dairy and we're working on the gut with probiotics, and you could do a digestive enzyme to help break down the immunocomplexes too, and the histamine, that's a good idea too, and that can help with the histamine levels too. So look at foods. You may even need to do a food panel if you can't figure it out. But it is common to be one of those four foods of gluten, dairy, corn, or soy. Maybe it's sugar too. You know, that could be a possibility. But having seen many, many allergy cases, I would say dairy is probably the most common. So it's causing low-grade inflammation probably all the time, but the release of the histamine and the pollen reactions is heightening that inflammation, and so taking out a food sensitivity. So your gut is releasing a lot of histamine, so that's where the inflammation is coming from. So healing the gut is probably the number 2 thing I would do after the adrenals. Basically, there could even be a leaky gut. That is very much a possibility. So the seasonal allergies are unveiling or kind of bringing to the surface an underlying gut issue that otherwise is kind of not active during the rest of the year, but during those times it's really prominent. So it could be a leaky gut issue. That would be number 3, is really to treat the gut. So number 2 would be find a food sensitivity if that is a possibility. Number 3 is treat the gut. So it might be unleashing or revealing some hidden deep gut imbalance, which many of us have. Just throughout the course of our life, there's been many antibiotics, probably, well, in my case there was. Food quality is a little bit different than it used to be. Even our meats, there could be antibiotics from the meats, not always in Canada, but sometimes. More spraying on our vegetables, more pesticides. So it just has an effect on our gut, and always healing and treating the gut is probably the number 3 thing I would say. Number 4 would be to treat the liver. And so when the liver can't detoxify and pump out toxins, detonate anything that we kind of are reactive to from the outer world, there could be an excess of a histamine reaction. So I would say I like to do Unda remedies, so I would give Unda remedies for the gut, but also you could do like a botanical tincture of bitters, and that could help the gut. Like I was saying in one of my other Facebook lives, the Bulk Barn has a product called Canadian Bitters that's supposed to be really good. I think Flora, that company Flora, which is a great company, they have Swedish bitters. We in the clinic are just going to start, after this pandemic thing is over, we can properly get the bottles, all that, we're going to have our own house-made bitter, because it makes a huge difference. So anything that's bitter stimulates the liver, and when the liver is pumping better, it can detonate toxins better, we can eliminate more efficiently, your bowel movements are more efficient, breath is more efficient, perspiration is more efficient, urination is more efficient. So the body's just getting things out, and it's not just this accumulation in the body of toxins, and then from that inflammation, boom, there's more histamine. So I would always treat the liver. At first, when I thought allergies was an easy thing to treat, I did have fairly good success, because I would basically just do liver cleanses and liver remedies, and it worked pretty well. So I would say a good majority of the population just needs to treat the liver, but when it's really a chronic issue, the adrenals are number 1. We got to treat the adrenals. And often people will say they're not stressed, but work pressures are heavy, and overworking and not slowing down during those times is a big sign that, you know, your body is trying to tell you to slow down. So I often look at symptoms as messengers too. And if you're overriding and just work, or having heavy pressure, family pressure, whatever it is, stress, trauma, work deadlines, children's like activities, whatever it is, fear, you know, even during the pandemic, fear based thoughts, all of that is stress. You're not sleeping, you're overthinking, all of that stress will impact the adrenals. And so we have to figure out what is affecting the adrenals. All the other 3 points that I made can all affect the adrenals. So if you're eating dairy and your body has to be highly inflamed, your adrenals will have to compensate for that inflammation. If you're having leaky gut, that is one of the top reasons that the adrenals will be overly stressed, and just pumping out cortisol to put out that fire of inflammation. And when the liver is not pumping properly or flowing properly, it affects the adrenals too, when there's a high toxic load in the body. So adrenals are primary, and you got to figure out why they're depleted. It could be that you just need more rest. It could be that you need to change in diet. It could be that you need to slow down. It could be that you're just primed for like high pressure. Like my dad has such bad allergies, but he's like 70 plus and works like literally like a maniac. He says he loves it, but he will not stop. Like, he works like 6 days a week, and he works like he just came from India and is hustling just like that, where there's really no need to hustle like that anymore, but he just won't stop, and he won't slow down, and so his adrenals, they just can't really catch up, and they're always kind of taxed. And so during this season, his allergies are really bad. So his overall health is excellent. There's really no other things drawing to affect his adrenals, but his work, the pressure that he puts on himself is like astronomical. So that's easy to see too. I see patients come in all the time and they cannot function with allergies. Like, just, it's so horrifically bad, and they repeatedly tell me that they're not stressed, and somewhere that they are, but they're not aware of it, they're not able to articulate it. So there's not much I can do by saying I think you are, because they keep saying that they're not. So we got to just keep digging and treating until we figure out what the root is. Supplement wise, this takes a lot more digging, but acutely, like if you have to take a antihistamine until you get to the deeper work, that's to me not a non-issue, but you got to do the deeper work because your body's telling you something. It's allergic to the earth. It's telling you something. Vitamin C is really good. It helps the adrenals. It helps stabilize the histamine. It's really excellent for allergies season. So you could do IVs. You could just take more vitamin C during allergy season. Quercetin, again, is a natural supplement that you could purchase and I would get a good quality one, and you could try quercetin. It's a natural supplement to help dampen the histamine. Cod liver oil sometimes too dampens the histamine, just because it helps to decrease inflammation. If I were to say a gut supplement, probiotics, like a high quality probiotic, and maybe even L-glutamine, because L-glutamine really, like when the gut is inflamed, it just really kind of helps to put that fire out, and maybe a good quality digestive enzyme. And I'm not a fan of those all long term, especially the digestive enzyme, but during allergy season, you got to do what you got to do to help break down those complexes, and then the rest of the time you're working a little deeper to fix the adrenals, which can take time. So adrenals take a lot of time. I know there's several patients on here who have been working on their adrenals for a long time, but once they kind of like click into place, it's like you have a new life, and it's amazing. It feels great. I really had super taxed adrenals my entire life, and they're just starting to feel better the last few years, and it's like I can't even imagine what life would be like if I grew up like that. This is like incredible. So it's just such a difference. So you want to treat your adrenals like gold, and if they don't feel like gold, you gotta treat them till they do, and it's possible to make them feel like gold. So that's what I wanted to talk about with allergies. Good info, Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, it's really not so simple. And remember, you are allergic to the earth when you're reacting like that. That's a deep issue. Little things to note, there's 4, this is probably way too much information, but there's kind of 4 body compositions that I look for and how they detox. Each one is different. The one who has allergies, a tendency towards allergies, there is more of a tendency towards lower minerals in the body, so they demineralize easy. So you want to make sure that there's good mineral status. It could be in the form of like craving salt all the time, because salt, historically, good quality salt had lots of minerals, so that's like a hint that that body needs maybe more minerals. Maybe they lose their hair a little bit easier, and maybe they get just more fatigued easier, history of low iron, they're always thinking about calcium, things like that. Those are all minerals. So that body type is that body type needs more minerals. Also, like a big hint is like cat allergies. So anyone who has a cat allergies probably is the body type that needs more minerals. So I always ask those two questions. If you have a cat allergy, react to cats in any ways. You might have a cat. I'm not asking you to get rid of the cat, but if there's any reactions to cats, often that's a good hint that that body needs more minerals. So adrenals, yes, they take a long time to heal. Do they ever really heal? I believe that they heal. I believe that they heal, but then that person typically has not great boundaries, and so they can crash again when you start to feel awesome. So that person is always like kind of go to stimulate themselves. So a lot of times people with adrenals, either they can't do much or they're always on the go because they're trying to stimulate the adrenals. So they do heal, but they're going to be, I would say, more delicate, and they will tell you when you are overdoing it. So you have to be very careful, because you're overdoing it will come quicker than most people who can just override them. But I think that they totally heal. They just have a really thin point of like going from I feel good to you totally overrode all your boundaries that told you shouldn't be doing that extra stuff, and now you're gonna pay for it. So, but I think that they do heal. So Donna says, great info. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer a few more questions. Anything about the adrenals, anything about histamine, anything I can help before we sign off today. Any other questions? Yeah, doesn't look like there's any other. I know there's a bit of a delay between mine and what's typed, and sometimes I'll see their posting afterwards and there's all these questions that didn't show up on my phone when we were actually recording. So my apologies if I don't read out your question. It actually didn't show up on my screen. So I'm never ignoring anyone, but sometimes it doesn't show up. So if I happen to catch a question that I wasn't on the live, I will try to answer it. But if you have any last questions now. Any fruits that carry histamines to avoid? That's a good question. I actually don't know. I think it's berries, if I recall correctly. You can look up histamine foods, but I believe for sure blueberries, and it might be like all the berries, but for sure blueberries. So that's a good question. So during berry season, you can override with the pollen too. Sometimes there's like cross reactions with the pollen and like some trees and apples. So you can look up pollen and fruit reactions. You can look that up too. But for histamines, I think it is berries for what I remember. That's a good question. I don't totally know that, but if I find a list, maybe I'll pop it up onto this chat. But yes, any other questions before we finish for today? All right. That's great. That was awesome, everyone. Thank you for signing in. As per usual, we're going to do a little summary, put that up tomorrow on the blog too. And I believe we're just confirming, so don't quote me, but I think we're going to open Brio, and it's going to be very slow, like very, very, very few patients, but starting June 2nd. We're still going to be heavily doing telemedicine because we can't cram up the clinic just because of social distancing. Chrissy says, awesome. As always, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. So just keep an eye out for a newsletter that might indicate our opening date. But again, it's going to be very, very slow. And also don't forget about Brigo, so our quarantine version of Bingo. And you have at least exactly 1 month to fill out the card. And you can enter to win some awesome in-clinic giveaways. And if you're a dad, you have a little extra dad, father figure, uncle, grandpa, whatever you are, you get a little extra gifts just because it falls on Father's Day when we are giving the gifts away. So yeah, if anyone in your family wants to fill that out, who's a father figure, anyone, they get a little extra just as our giveaway, give back for Father's Day to celebrate the dads, the Brio dads. But yeah, Brigo. So it's pretty fun. Dr. Vanessa came up with most of it, and a lot of them is like watch a Facebook video, Facebook Live. So you guys have done that already, so you can stamp that off. And other things like, you know, say hi to a neighbor, check in on somebody who may need that you haven't heard from, things like that. It's just all like super cute things. So have a look at that, and it should be in our newsletter, and it's also up on our Facebook group too, so you can print it out, and when it's all stamped and it's complete, you can bring it in and you will be entered to win. So that's that, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Have an awesome weekend, and I am signing off for today. Thanks. Bye.